So the question we get most on the road is, how do we get internet? And we have two connections. We have an LTE connection and we have Starlink. We actually use the LTE connection more than Starlink because Starlink we can pause, and Starlink actually costs us more than our LTE connection does on a monthly basis. The only issue that we have had is that because we're living in an airstream, which is essentially a Faraday cage, LTE signals don't like to come through those. Whether it's LTE or even Wi-Fi signals don't like to come through those aluminum bodies. So we have to work to get the signal into the airstream also to then broadcast it throughout the interior. All right, so let's talk about our setup. So this is a flagpole that you can get at Harbor Freight. This is a very popular choice for Starlink, and we actually use it for both. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But for now, let's talk about the LTE setup. We use a directional antenna. That antenna was something that we just upgraded to. Previously, we were using an omnidirectional antenna. Now, the benefit of this is obviously it's omnidirectional. You don't have to aim it. The directional antenna does have to be aimed, which is why we like this setup, because with this setup, I can actually rotate that antenna whichever way I need. So it takes us a little bit longer to get set up when we get to a site, because essentially you have to go find the towers. Now there's some apps and stuff to help with that, and we can cover that later. But it's been great. There's a huge benefit in using a directional antenna over an omnidirectional antenna. Honestly, the speed's almost doubled from one to the other. So the antenna mast came from Harbor Freight. These brackets here are actually conduit hangers that you can get on Amazon. They're about $5 a piece, and this is actually two of them connected together with this single bolt that does come with it. So it made it very, very easy. And then the added benefit is that you can see we use it kind of for our cable management here. So this is just some standard cable management, cable wrap, and we ran it through these pieces that are coming off of this conduit hanger. Now over here, we have, I'm old school, so initially I was using zip ties, but we've switched over and we're using VELCRO straps now to hold our cables up and keep those tucked in and out of the way. Now these cables do not come with the antenna. We have to buy these separately. And again, we'll try to provide links to as much of this as we possibly can. Again, all this came, as far as the LTE connection, most of this came from Amazon. So we have to try to get our connection into the interior of the airstream. And one of the things that I found was using these flat cables here help us tremendously with going up into hatches. So you can see the cables are flat and they go into or connect to our LTE modem here. This we then stuck using command strips actually to the top.
I love command strips. They're my favorite thing in the whole world.
To the top of our box there. Behind this, by the way, is just our power for the solar connection. And then from this, I then connected off of the Ethernet ports on the back of this, I connected to our own access point, Wi-Fi access point. The benefit of that is that these, while they are fine, they don't really put out as good of a signal as I can get from some other access point. So again, just continuing to put a better signal into the airstream. All right, come on in and let me show you how we've got the Wi-Fi access point mounted, and you can also then see the cables being run inside. So under the bed, what I did was I screwed the access point to the bottom of our plywood here that supports our bed. And then again, flat Ethernet cables going back to our modem in the bottom there. So our Starlink setup, we, just like a lot of people, and you can find this recommendation online, we use this Husky tote, and inside of here is essentially everything that we need, and it keeps everything nice and compact and easily stows away in the back of the truck. So we're going to cover this also, but I've cut and spliced our Starlink cable and added an Ethernet connection on here. The Starlink cable itself is just a Cat6 cable, but one thing that is unique to it is that it does have a grounding wire inside. And so it takes more than just simply putting a Cat6 end on there. You also need to ground these connections. And I'll show you how we've done that here in just a second. So everybody knows this guy. With Starlink, a recommendation is to use the Harbor Freight flagpole, and they 3D print mounting brackets to go with this. Now, some people mount them on the outside. The one we have actually goes inside of the flagpole, and this slides down then inside of that. One of the benefits that we have is that we can actually keep both connections running at the same time. And we have found there are times when we do need both connections. But this will simply go on top here, slides in, and flips in like that. The mount that we have is really slides down inside of the top of this flagpole, and we just use Gorilla Glue to seal it in there permanently. So it does touch the antenna that we have a little bit, but that's just when it's stowed. When it's operational and functioning, it will never sit like this, so it's fine. And then we can raise the whole thing up. And get full clearance of pretty much anything and anywhere that we are. All right, so again, the cable that comes with Starlink is proprietary. And so switching that out to Cat6 gave us more of a universal connection. But again, that cable is specific in that it needs to be grounded. So there's plenty of videos, there's plenty of tutorials online on how to splice this and make it into a Cat6. What I found though was none of them really covered a nice, clean, easy way to ground this cable. You don't need to really worry about grounding the router itself because the router itself is grounded. It has a ground plug on it. But this cable, grounding this is important for protecting dishy. So let me show you over here what we did for that. So inside of our battery box here, I mounted this little box, and I'm going to take this off and show you what it looks like inside.
Oh, look, another command strip. I'm telling you, they're the best.
So this box has the capability of adding a grounding cord, and what I did was I ground it to the frame with the Airstream. This cable here runs inside the battery box here. We make our connection. Again, this is coming from the dish, and again this grounding strap will ground. Actually, it grounds both sides, but the important side to ground is this side running up to the dish. So we close that up. That sticks right here. Again, we got our grounding strap. This is again a flat Cat6 cable, so now we can switch this basically to a universal Cat6 cable. I always use flat cables because that allows us then to get into our hatches easily. And so that runs then inside to here to a Cat6. And we don't need to ground this side because this router will get its ground from the power connection. But we make our connection to the Starlink router. That's simply just a Cat6 jumper. And again, this side is also Cat6 that I spliced together. This essentially completes our connection up to the dishy. And from there, we're good to go. We can close all of this up. It's all watertight and sealed. No issues at all with leaks or anything like that now. And dishy's totally fine. couple of quick tips that we have whenever you're doing your connection and you're ordering all the parts and pieces that you need. If you need 4 cables for something, order 6, because it's always good to have extras, because you never know when cables like this are going to break and when you're traveling. Same thing here for these cables when you're traveling. If you have extras on hand, make your life so much better all around. All right, so another quick tip that we have for you is, I'm old school. I used to use the plastic zip strips for all of our cable management. Trust me, it's much better just to go with Velcro. One, you should be able to get a nice bulk of Velcro straps for this. This makes it very easy to take on and take off. These straps actually will hold up even in 65 mile per hour traveling down the road. They stay connected. It makes it really easy too whenever we're trying to work on something and we're either putting things away, like this will get rolled up, or whenever we need to replace a cable. You can easily unstrap it, swap the cables out, strap everything back up nice and tight.
You know me, you know I love organization, and we have 4 cables that connect to this LTE connection, and Jason asked me to label these for him. So the ports are labeled at the top on the antenna, but for the flat cables, we put a number on the duct tape and a corresponding number on a little label that I printed out with my label maker, because you know I'm traveling with one of those, so that if we do need to disconnect these to work on anything, we know which ones go. And then up at the top, that antenna doesn't travel up there, so those have to come down and get reconnected every time we travel. So that way we know which cables go where.
So another quick tip that we have for you is duct tape. Everybody knows and loves duct tape, especially in the RV world. But the reason that we put duct tape here on these connections going into our hatches is because this will actually vibrate and can wear on these cables. So it's easier just to keep basically another layer of protection on your cables, help them last a little bit longer. So one of the things that we were using prior to moving into our Airstream was we used Wyze cams for just about all of our own home DIY security. They're super affordable, and they actually give you a really good image quality. They'll work daytime, nighttime. The one that we have actually has a spotlight on it. I'll show you that. So what I did was, it comes with just a micro USB connection. Again, flat cables. I got a flat USB extension cable to plug this into. And then the mount that it comes with, we just stuck on the side of the Airstream, and it just pops in. And there it is.